Some queens are not crowned. They are forged in the ash of their own funeral. The northern wind carried no mercy on the night Alara was cast out. She had been dragged through the stone corridors of the Shadow Peak stronghold, her bare feet scraping against frost and blood, her wrists bound with iron that burned like betrayal. The pack had gathered in silence, not to mourn her, but to witness her erasure. Alpha Kale Thornridge stood at the center of the courtyard, his jaw carved from winter itself, his eyes refusing to meet hers. Beside him, Seraphine, golden, radiant, chosen, smiled beneath a veil of false sorrow. "She deceived us," Seraphine whispered, her voice honeyed poison. "She tried to trap the Alpha with a lie." Alara's knees buckled as they forced her down into the snow. Her breath came in ragged clouds. She looked up at Kyle, the mate bond screaming inside her chest like a wolf caught in a snare. "I carry your child," she said, her voice breaking. Kyle's expression did not shift. He turned his back. "You carry nothing but shame," he said. "The bond was a mistake. You are no mate of mine." The words hit harder than the cold. The elders stepped forward, their faces stone. One of them held a silver blade, not to kill her, but to mark her. They pressed it to her collarbone, carving the sigil of exile into her flesh. She did not scream. She would not give them that. "Leave," Kyle commanded, his voice distant, hollow, "and do not return." They shoved her toward the gates. The wolves growled low, teeth bared, ensuring she would not resist. Behind her, Seraphine leaned into Kale's side, her hand resting on his chest where Alara's should have been. The gates closed with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. Alara staggered into the woods, her body trembling, her mind fracturing. Snow began to fall thick and silent, erasing her footprints as though she had never existed. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the faint flutter of life within. "You will know your father's name," she whispered to the child, "but you will never bow to it." The forest swallowed her whole. She walked for 3 days. The cold gnawed at her bones. Her exile mark throbbed, infected and raw. Hunger clawed at her insides, but she forced herself forward, one step, then another, because stopping meant dying, and dying meant her child would never draw breath. On the 4th night, she collapsed beside a frozen stream. The moon hung low and full, casting silver light across the snow. Alara closed her eyes, her breath shallow, her heartbeat slowing. She thought of Kale's face, the way he had looked at her once, before Seraphine, before the lies. She thought of the bond, still there, still pulling, even as it withered. "Forgive me," she whispered to the child. "I tried." Then she heard it, a low guttural sound, not a wolf, something older. She opened her eyes. A figure stood at the edge of the trees, cloaked in shadow. Red eyes glowed faintly in the dark, not hostile, curious. "You smell of death," the voice said, neither male nor female, but also of something else, something the moon has touched. Alara tried to rise, but her body refused. The figure moved closer, kneeling beside her. Beneath the hood, she glimpsed pale skin, sharp features, and eyes that had seen centuries. "What are you?" she managed. "A memory," the figure replied. "And you, child, are a prophecy." The stranger placed a hand over Ilara's heart. Warmth flooded through her, sharp and electric. Her wounds began to close. Her breath steadied. The figure withdrew, standing once more. "Go south," they said, "to the ruins of Ashvale. There you will find what was taken from you." "What was taken?" Alara whispered. The figure smiled, sad and knowing. "Your name." They vanished into the snow, leaving only footprints that faded as the wind rose. Alara pulled herself to her feet. Her hand rested on her belly, and for the first time since the exile, she felt something other than despair. She felt rage. 5 years passed like a scar forming over a wound. Ilara built a life in the shadow of Ashvale, a crumbling temple city where the old gods still whispered. She learned what the stranger had meant. She was not merely Omega. She was Pathfinder, a bloodline thought extinct, capable of seeing threads of fate, of altering destinies with will alone. Her son, Orin, grew strong and wild, his eyes the same silver gray as his father's. She told him stories of wolves and kings, but never spoke Kael's name. Not yet. Then the summons came. A raven arrived at dawn, bearing the royal seal of Shadow Peak. The message was brief. King Kael Thornridge invites all wolves of noble blood to witness his coronation and the union with Queen Seraphine. Attendance is expected. Ilara held the letter over a candle flame and watched it burn. Orin stood beside her, his small hand gripping hers. "Mama, why are you crying?" She wiped her eyes and knelt to meet his gaze. "Because, my love, it is time." "Time for what?" She kissed his forehead. "Time to return what was stolen. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. The road to Shadow Peak was lined with wolves. Ilara traveled in a carriage draped in black velvet, her face hidden beneath a mourning veil. Orin sat beside her, dressed in fine wool and silver threading, his posture regal for a child of 5. He did not fidget. He watched the world with the same intensity his father once had. "Will they hurt us?" he asked quietly. "They will try," Ilara replied, "but we are not the same people they cast out." The carriage rolled through the gates at dusk. Shadow Peak had changed. Where once there had been warmth and firelight, now there was only cold grandeur. Banners of black and gold hung from every tower. Wolves lined the streets, their eyes hollow, their bodies lean. The prosperity Kael had promised with Seraphine at his side had not come. Ilara stepped down from the carriage, her cloak billowing in the wind. She kept the veil in place. Not yet, not until the moment was right. A guard approached, his expression wary. "State your name and business." "I am Lady Ashvale," she said, her voice smooth and distant. "I come to honor the new king." The guard hesitated, then nodded. "You may enter. The ceremony begins at moonrise." Orin took her hand as they walked through the courtyard. Wolves turned to stare, sensing something familiar yet foreign in her presence. The bond, dormant for 5 years, began to stir. Somewhere in the castle, Kael would feel it too. A ghost returning from the grave. They were led to a chamber overlooking the throne room. Ilara watched through the window as wolves gathered below, their voices murmuring in anticipation. At the center of the room stood Kael. He had aged, not in years, but in weight. His shoulders were broader, his jaw harder, his eyes shadowed by something unspoken. He wore black and silver, a crown of iron waiting on a velvet pillow beside the throne. And beside him, radiant as ever, stood Seraphine. She wore white and gold, her hair braided with pearls, her smile serene. She looked every inch the queen she had always believed herself to be. Ilara's fingers curled around the edge of the window. "That's him, isn't it?" Orin whispered. Yes. He looked sad. Alara's throat tightened. Sadness is not the same as regret. Will you forgive him? She looked down at her son, her heart aching. Forgiveness is not mine to give. It is yours. The ceremony began with the lighting of the sacred fire. Alara descended the stairs, her veil still in place, Oren at her side. They moved through the crowd like shadows, unnoticed until they reached the edge of the throne room. The elder wolves stood in a circle, chanting the old rites. Kyle knelt before them, his head bowed. Seraphine placed a hand on his shoulder, her smile widening. Then the bond flared. Kyle's head snapped up, his eyes searching the crowd. The elders paused. The chanting stopped. Every wolf in the room felt it. The return of something thought dead. Ilara stepped forward. She removed the veil. The room went silent. Kale rose slowly, his face draining of color. His lips parted, but no sound came. Seraphine's smile faltered, her hand dropping from his shoulder. Ilara, Kale breathed. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Your Majesty. Oren stepped forward, his small hand still in hers. The resemblance was undeniable. The same silver eyes, the same sharp features, the same presence that commanded without speaking. Kale's gaze dropped to the boy, and something inside him broke. No, he whispered. Yes, Ilara said softly. This is Oren, your son, your heir. The wolves erupted into chaos. Seraphine was the first to speak. This is a lie, she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the noise. A desperate ploy by a rejected Omega to reclaim what was never hers. Alara did not look at her. Her eyes remained on Kyle. You left me to die, she said, her voice steady. You carved exile into my flesh and told me I carried nothing but shame. I did not come here to beg. I came to show you what survives when you bury it alive. Kale took a step forward, his hand outstretched. Ilara, do not touch me. Her words stopped him cold. You forfeited that right 5 years ago. Oren watched his father with wide, curious eyes. Are you a king? He asked. Kale's throat worked. I will be. Mama says kings are supposed to be brave, Oren said. Are you? The question hung in the air like a blade. One of the elders stepped forward, his face grave. If the boy is truly of Thornridge blood, he must be tested. The moon will know. Seraphine's expression darkened. This is absurd. She could have taken any child. Then let the moon decide, Ilara said, her voice ringing clear. I have nothing to hide. The elder nodded. At dawn, the trial of blood will be held. If the boy bears the mark of the Alpha line, his claim is true. If not... He did not finish. Kyle's hands clenched into fists. No, I will not put him through that. You have no choice, the elder said. The law is clear. Seraphine smiled, cold and triumphant. Then we shall see the truth come morning. Ilara lifted Oren into her arms and turned to leave. The crowd parted for her, silent and stunned. As she reached the doors, she paused and looked back at Kale. 5 years ago, you chose convenience over truth, she said. Tomorrow, you will choose again. And this time, the moon is watching. She walked out, leaving Kyle standing alone in the center of the throne room, the crown still unworn, the bond screaming louder than it ever had. Chapter 4. The chamber they gave her was not a prison, but it felt like one. Stone walls, a single window overlooking the courtyard, a bed too large for two people who would never share it. Ilara stood at the window, watching the wolves below prepare for the trial. Torches were being lit. A circle of stones was being arranged. Blood would be drawn. Truth would be demanded. Oren slept in the bed, his small body curled beneath the furs, his breathing soft and even. She had sung him to sleep with the old songs, the ones her mother had sung to her before the exile, before the world became teeth and claws. A knock at the door broke the silence. Ilara did not turn. Enter. The door opened. Kale stepped inside, alone. He looked older in the dim light, more human. The crown had not yet touched his head, but the weight of it was already in his eyes. He closed the door behind him and stood there, uncertain, like a wolf caught between fight and flight. "You should not be here," Ilara said. "I know." His voice was rough, worn. "But I had to see you, to what?" She turned to face him, her expression cold. "To apologize, to explain. Do you think words can undo what you did?" Kale flinched. "No, I don't. But I need you to know that You believed her," Ilara interrupted. "You believed Seraphine's lie over the bond, over me." "She showed me proof," Kale said, his voice breaking. "Letters, witnesses. They said you were with another wolf, that the child wasn't mine. I was young, Ilara. I was afraid. The pack was already unstable, and she offered unity, strength. She offered you what you wanted to hear." Ilara's voice was sharp, cutting. "And you took it because it was easier than standing beside me." Kyle's fists clenched. "Every day since that night, I have lived with the choice I made. Every single day, the bond has screamed at me that I was wrong, but I buried it. I told myself I had done what was necessary, that you were gone, that I had moved on." "And now?" Ilara asked. "Now that I am here, alive, carrying the proof of your cowardice in my arms, what do you feel?" Kyle looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the truth in his eyes. Not regret, not guilt. Something deeper. Agony. "I feel like I am dying," he whispered. Ilara's breath caught. The bond pulsed between them, sharp and undeniable. She wanted to hate him. She had spent 5 years sharpening that hate into something she could wield. But standing here, seeing him broken, she felt it begin to crack. "You cannot undo what you did," she said quietly. "But you can choose what happens next." Kyle stepped closer. "Tell me how to fix this." "You cannot fix it," she said. "You can only face it." He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, not quite touching. "I never stopped feeling you," he said. "Even when I tried, even when I told myself it was over, you were always there." Ilara closed her eyes. "And I was always alone." Kyle's hand dropped. "Tomorrow the trial will prove he is mine, and when it does, I will name him heir. I will give him everything I should have given you." "He does not want your crown," Ilara said. "He wants a father." The words hit Kyle like a blade. He staggered back, his composure shattering. "I don't know how to be that. I don't know if I deserve to be." "You don't," Ilara said. "But he does." Kyle looked at the bed where Oren slept, his small body peaceful, unaware of the storm brewing around him. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "What do I do?" Ilara turned back to the window. "You survive tomorrow, and then you decide what kind of king you want to be. Kale stood there for a long moment, silent, broken. Then he left, closing the door softly behind him. Alara pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the bond pulse, feeling the old wound reopen. She had survived 5 years without him. She could survive one more night, but tomorrow everything would change. Chapter 5. Dawn came with blood. The trial of blood was an ancient rite, older than the pacts themselves. It required the child to stand in the center of a stone circle while the alpha's blood was poured onto the sacred earth. If the bond of lineage was true, the ground would glow silver. If not, it would remain dark. Alara dressed Oren in simple white, the color of innocence. He did not understand what was about to happen, only that it was important. She knelt before him, brushing his hair back, memorizing his face. "Will it hurt?" he asked. "No, my love. You will only feel the moon's touch." "And then what?" "Then the world will know you are a prince." Oren frowned. "I don't want to be a prince. I want to be with you." Alara's heart broke. "You will always be with me, no matter what comes." A knock at the door. The guards had arrived. They walked through the castle in silence, Alara's hand wrapped around Oren's. Wolves lined the corridors, their eyes cold, their judgment unspoken. Some whispered as she passed. Others simply stared. The courtyard was filled when they arrived. The entire pack had gathered. At the center stood the stone circle, ancient and weathered, its surface stained with centuries of trials. Kyle stood beside it, his face carved from stone. Seraphine stood to his left, her expression serene, confident. The elder wolves waited, hooded and silent. Alara led Oren to the center of the circle. She kissed his forehead and stepped back. The crowd fell silent. The eldest wolf stepped forward, a silver blade in his hand. "Alpha Kale Thornridge, do you claim this child as your blood?" Kale's jaw tightened. He looked at Oren, at the small boy standing brave and uncertain in the center of the circle. Then he looked at Alara. "I do," he said. The elder nodded. He took Kyle's hand and made a shallow cut across his palm. Blood welled, dark and rich. Kyle did not flinch. The elder walked to Oren and knelt. "Do not be afraid, young one." Oren looked at Alara. She nodded. The elder pressed Kyle's bleeding palm to the ground. The blood seeped into the earth, pooling in the grooves of the ancient stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Seraphine's smile widened. Then the ground began to glow. Silver light spread from the blood, crawling across the stone like veins of moonlight. It pulsed, bright and undeniable, illuminating Oren from below. The boy gasped, his eyes wide, as the light wrapped around him like a living thing. The crowd erupted. Wolves howled. Some dropped to their knees. The elders bowed their heads. Seraphine's face went white. Kale staggered back, his hand trembling, his eyes locked on his son. The bond between them snapped into place, fierce and undeniable. "He is Thornridge," the elder declared. "He is Heir." Alara closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. Oren ran to her, wrapping his arms around her legs. She lifted him, holding him close. Kale approached slowly, his expression shattered. He stopped a few feet away, his hand reaching out, then falling. "Oren," he said, his voice breaking, "I'm sorry." The boy looked at him, curious, unafraid. "Why are you crying?" Kyle's breath hitched. "Because I thought I had lost you before I ever knew you." Oren tilted his head. "You can't lose someone who's right here." The simplicity of it broke Kale completely. He dropped to his knees, his shoulders shaking. Alara watched, her heart torn between fury and compassion. She had come for justice, for recognition. But now, standing here, she realized something else. She had come for truth. And truth, once revealed, could not be buried again. Chapter 6. The coronation was delayed. The revelation of Oren's bloodline had thrown Shadowpeak into chaos. Some wolves demanded Seraphine's exile. Others called for Alara to be named queen. The elders convened an emergency council, debating laws that had not been tested in centuries. Kyle retreated to his chambers, refusing all visitors except one. Alara found him standing at the window, staring out at the mountains. He did not turn when she entered. "You should be celebrating," she said. "I should be ashamed," Kyle replied. Alara walked to the fire, warming her hands. "Shame is cheap. What will you do with it?" Kyle turned to face her. "I will abdicate." She froze. "What?" "I will step down," he said. "Name Oren heir and appoint a regent until he comes of age. I do not deserve this crown." "And what of the pack?" Alara asked. "What of the chaos you will leave behind?" "They will survive." "And Oren?" Her voice sharpened. "Will he survive knowing his father chose guilt over responsibility?" Kale flinched. "I am trying to do what is right." "Right would have been standing beside me 5 years ago," Alara said. "Now you must do what is necessary." "And what is that?" She stepped closer, her eyes fierce. "You will take the crown. You will rule. And you will teach our son what it means to carry the weight of a kingdom, not through abdication, but through redemption." Kale's breath hitched. "I don't know how." "Then learn." Her voice softened. "You were not brave 5 years ago. Be brave now." He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something other than guilt in his eyes. She saw hope. "Stay," he said. "Help me." Alara's heart twisted. "I did not come here to save you, Kale." "I know," he said, "but maybe we can save each other." The fire crackled between them. Outside, the moon rose, full and silver. Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen. Chapter 7. The coronation was held beneath the full moon. Kale stood at the center of the throne room, the crown of iron resting on his head, heavy and cold. The pack knelt before him, their voices rising in the ancient oath of loyalty. Seraphine was gone, banished to the eastern forests, her name struck from the records. Alara stood beside the throne, not as queen, but as witness. She had refused the title. "I am not here to rule," she had said. "I am here to ensure our son knows who he is." Oren sat on a smaller throne beside his father, dressed in silver and black, his small hands gripping the armrests. He looked every inch a prince, even at 5 years old. Kyle spoke the words of kingship, his voice steady, his gaze clear. When the ceremony ended, the wolves howled, and the sound echoed through the mountains. Later, in the quiet of the royal chambers, Kyle sat with Oren, teaching him the names of the stars. Alara watched from the doorway, her heart aching with something she could not name. "Mama, come sit," Oren called. She hesitated, then joined them. Kale shifted, making room. Their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. "What is strength, if not choosing mercy?" Kyle said quietly. Alara looked at him. "Mercy is not forgetting. It is choosing to move forward despite the weight of what was." Kale nodded slowly. "Then I will carry that weight. For him. For you." Oren yawned, leaning against his father's side. Cale's arm wrapped around him instinctively, protectively. Elara felt the bond pulse, warm and alive, not healed, but healing. Perfeito. Você quer manter o mesmo tom poético e cinematográfico dos outros capítulos, mas com mais profundidade emocional e visual nos dois últimos, expandindo as cenas e sensações do renascimento e da redenção final. Aqui está a reescrita completa e ampliada dos capítulos 8 e 9. Chapter 8. The winter had withdrawn its claws from Shadow Peak, but the cold lingered in spirit. Every morning, mist rose from the valley like the breath of sleeping gods, veiling the towers in silver haze. Inside those walls, the kingdom began to breathe again. Wolves once divided by lies now labored side by side beneath banners of black and moonlight white. Elara moved through it all in silence, a ghost-turned guardian, her presence both a reminder and a promise. Cale ruled differently now. The throne no longer devoured him. Where once there had been rage and certainty, there was listening. He weighed each decision as though holding a blade at both ends. The nobles chafed at his restraint, but the people, the forgotten, the broken, flocked to him. They saw in their king the same hunger for redemption that haunted their own hearts. Elara watched from the margins, her counsel sought more often than spoken aloud. Cale relied on her without demanding closeness. That, she thought, was the truest measure of change. At dusk, the throne room crackled with torchlight. They stood over parchment maps and bloodline texts, discussing how to end the wars at the northern borders. His hand brushed hers as he pointed to a river route, and instinct made her freeze. 5 years ago, that touch had carried fire. Now it carried gravity. A quiet understanding that love, in its purest form, sometimes meant patience. Later she found him on the ramparts, armor stripped away, the wind whipping his hair. The moon carved his silhouette in silver. "Do you ever stop blaming yourself?" she asked softly. Kyle turned slowly. "Not for the exile, not for you, but for who I became after. I ruled with a heart full of ashes. And now," he smiled faintly, "now I sift through them, hoping to find something worth keeping." Elara moved closer, the air between them cold, alive. "You cannot rebuild from what is gone. You rebuild from what remains." Their eyes met, heavy with what might have been. For the first time since that winter night, Cale reached out, not in claim, but in gratitude. She did not draw back. Below, in the courtyard, Oren trained with the young wolves. His laughter echoed against the stones, wild and bright. Kyle watched his son with wordless pride. "He leads by kindness," Kyle said, "not fear." "He leads because he has known both," Elara replied. The moon drifted higher, white and patient, and for a moment the three of them, King, Omega, and Heir, looked like fragments of the same constellation, bound by gravity, not fate. The bond between Elara and Kyle pulsed once, a silent heartbeat, not resurrected, but enduring. When she turned to leave, Kyle's voice stopped her. "Elara, if I asked you to stay, not as queen, not as mate, but as the keeper of what makes me human, would you?" Her answer came like snowfall. "I am already here." Chapter 9. Spring unfolded like an apology. The rivers thawed first, their waters roaring with new life. Green unfurled where snow had ruled. Wolves returned from war, scarred but alive. The kingdom, once an echo chamber of grief, began to hum again with laughter, trade, and love. Yet beneath it all, the past remained, woven into every banner, whispered in every prayer. Alara walked among the people as one of them. They bowed not out of fear, but reverence. She carried no titles, no crown, only the small silver medallion she had forged from the iron collar once used to brand her exile. She had melted the past and worn it as protection. Cale watched her from the steps of the great hall, pride and pain mingling in his chest. He had come to understand that forgiveness was not a single act, but a discipline, a vow renewed every day against self-hatred. Oren was nearly 6 and already refused to sit still. He wandered the stables, the training grounds, and the library, asking every wolf he met what it meant to be strong. The answers fascinated him. Some said power, some said loyalty. But one twilight, he turned to his mother and asked, "What does strength mean to you?" "To me," Alara said, brushing his unruly hair from his face, "strength is remembering who you are when the world tries to make you forget." He pondered this for days. When his birthday arrived, the pack gathered in the moon court, a circular courtyard built from old stones and surrounded by torches. This was the night of Oren's first vow, the moment he would stand before the goddess and speak what kind of ruler he aspired to be. The entire kingdom came to listen. Kyle stood behind his son, regal but humble, his crown glimmering with frost. Alara stood at the boy's other side, her cloak white as dawn. Together they looked less like rulers and more like a story, one no war could erase. Oren stepped into the moonlight. "I was born of exile," he said, his small voice echoing clear. "But I was raised among forgiveness. I have seen how hate breaks kings and how mercy remakes them. When I am older, I will not rule with fear. I will rule with truth." For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the wolves howled, a sound that reached beyond walls and mountains. Cale bowed his head, tears catching in the silver of his beard. Alara watched him, her chest swelling with something fierce and quiet. Perhaps some love could survive without possession, existing not as fire, but as steady light. Later that night, Cale found her by the reflecting pool. The moon rippled over the surface, broken and beautiful. "I used to believe the throne was a cage," he said, "but now I see it's what I make of it." "And what have you made?" she asked. He turned toward her. "A promise kept too late. A kingdom worth the wait." Alara stepped closer, eyes soft. "Then keep building." Cale's voice lowered. "Do you ever think we could begin again?" She smiled faintly. "We have, just not the way we once were." The wind moved through the arches like a sigh. Somewhere below, Oren's laughter rang again. When dawn came, light poured through the mountains, turning snow to gold. Cale stood with his family on the balcony of the great hall, watching the sun climb over a world they had remade with pain, patience, and grace. "Do you still wear the mark of exile?" he asked quietly. Alara touched the faint scar on her collarbone. "Always." "And does it hurt?" "Only when I forget why it exists." Kyle nodded. "Then I will never let you forget." He kissed her hand, not with possession, but reverence. The gesture said everything words could not, that redemption is not a gift, but a vow renewed with every heartbeat. Years later, when Oren became king, Shadow Peak's banner bore a new crest, a silver moon rising over a field of thorns. Beneath it, the kingdom thrived. They told stories of the Omega who survived death, the king who walked through shame, and the Heir who turned mercy into law. And when the wolves howled at night, their voices carried a prayer that echoed through the ages. Every Alpha King carries a wound. Every Omega was born to heal one. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive. Would you like me to expand this version with short epilogue vignettes set years later, showing Orin as king and Alara's final reflection under the moon?